Start now. Starting, Omar, it's okay? Huh? Okay, tight. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala abdillah wa rasulih wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Thumma amma ba'd. What time we have? 9:03. طيب فضل يا صاحب. الحديث الخامس والعشرون حديث number 25.
عن أبي ذر رضي الله عنه أن ناسا من أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قالوا للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يا رسول الله ذهب أهل الثغور بالأجور يصلون كما نصلي ويصومون كما نصوم ويتصدقون بفضول أموالهم قال أوليس قد جعل الله لكم ما تصدقون إن بكل تسبيحة صدقة وكل تكبيرة صدقة وكل تحميدة صدقة وكل تهليلة صدقة وأمر بالمعروف صدقة ونهي عن المنكر صدقة وفي بضع أحدكم صدقة قالوا يا رسول الله أيأتي أحدنا شهوته ويكون له أجر قال أرأيتم لو وضعها في حرام أكان عليه وزر فكذلك إذا وضعها في الحلال كان له أجر رواه مسلم.
الله يبارك فيكم. طيب. This hadith, inshallah, tabarak wa ta'ala, I'm just going to give some brief explanation, because if we, like yesterday, if we do that, we can try to finish what I want to accomplish, inshallah, especially when it's lengthy. So this hadith, you'll find Prophet Sallam is talking about actions, and all of them he said sadaqah. Yani kalimatu tayyibah, sadaqah, a good statement is sadaqah. Wa amr bil ma'roof, sadaqah, enjoying the good is sadaqah. Yani all of these things the Prophet, he says sadaqah. So in the end, the person that asked, well, what about if somebody take his desires and halal, would get a reward for that? Because they understood that all of these things the Prophet is saying is sadaqah, you're going to be rewarded. Because in the beginning of the hadith they said ahlu dathur. This means the people who have money, they're able to spend, while people who don't have money can't spend. So they felt that they were being left out of the whole thing of being able to give what's called sadaqah. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, every good thing, kullu ma'ruf and sadaqah, everything that's good is sadaqah. Then he started to name. So in the end, they said, knowing the sin of azina, illegal intercourse, and the fadl, the blessing, the barakat of az-zawaj, marriage, and having a mate. They said that if a person take his shahwa, because again shahwa is something that's low. When you say he's following his hawa, or huwa sahibu shahwa, that means he's following a desire that's lowly, meaning from the private parts, or that he's or she is following the desire that's lustful to do something bad. So they felt, how could we be rewarded for everything, including this? And so the Prophet said, if you do something with that same low desire in the haram, we're going to earn wizrun. Wizru here means some sins you carry on your back. So when they said naam, then the Prophet mentioned the opposite is true. If you take your desire and you put it in that which is halal, which are made, then you will be rewarded. So this hadith just shows you, as the other hadith, this is the one point from this hadith. لا تحقرن شيئا من المعروف. Don't underestimate any good deed. That's what this hadith proves, including having relations with a spouse. It's something that is not only you will be rewarded for, but it's also considered sadaqah, meaning you will go on the day of judgment as if you spent some money given to somebody, although you just did a tremendous deed. Fadal.
عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كل سلامة من الناس عليه صدقة كل يوم تطلع فيه الشمس تعدل بين الاثنين صدقة وتعين الرجل في دابته فتحمله عليها أو ترفع له عليها متاعه صدقة والكلمة الطيبة صدقة وبكل خطوة تمشيها إلى الصلاة صدقة وتميط الأذى عن الطريق صدقة رواه الشيخان.
No. This hadith is like the previous hadith, except different things were highlighted. And the Prophet mentioned every day that the sun rises, a person has the ability to do some charity. So that means it shouldn't be a day in the Muslim's life except that he's spending money, no, spending time doing something that will be as if he spent money. Because when you spend money, you expect something back great in return. Nobody spends money and wants something back that is old, something has no benefit. As for Salam, he said, Man ghasha falaysa minna. He said, whoever cheats or deceives or tricks, he's not from amongst us. Remember yesterday we said all of those hadith to say laysa minna or laysa minhu, it's not from it, or he's not from amongst us, doesn't mean he's a disbeliever. Means that that thing or that person who's doing the thing is not doing the thing that's from the adab of the Muslim. He's not doing the thing that's from our religion. It's not a characteristic from our religion for the believers. So Prophet Sallam, when he's mentioning this hadith, then he's showing you that every time the sun rises, you have ability to do something as if you're spending money, something that you will be pleased with in this life and hereafter, and that is sadaqah. And the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned وَتَعِينُ يعني شَخْصٌ عَلَى دَابَتِهِ, yani, and to help a person on the riding animal, and also to help him put his stuff that he has on the riding animal. So this also shows giving somebody a ride in this day and time, helping them with what they may have to put in the car. All of this is considered sadaqah. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned يعني وماذا وتعدل بين اثنين صدقة نعم, and to bring two people together that have some problem. Yani, this is also considered sadaqah. As the Prophet said, this Allah mentioned this in the Quran. And all of these things, all the way to the issue of going to pray, then it's considered sadaqah now.
عن النواس بن سمعان رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال البر حسن الخلق والإثم ما حاك في نفسك وكرهت أن يطلع عليه الناس. وعن وابصة بن معبد رضي الله عنه قال أتيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال جئت تسأل عن البر؟ قلت نعم. قال استفتح قلبك، البر ما اطمأنت إليه النفس واطمأن إليه القلب، والإثم ما حاك في النفس وتردد في الصدر وإن أفتاك الناس وأفتوك. حديث حسن روي في مسند الإمامين أحمد بن حنبل والدارمي بإسناد حسن.
This hadith, write down this point. I'm going to give you 2 points from this hadith. Actually 3. The first one, the Prophet said, Al-birru. Birru husnul khuluq. So here, birru, they said, yani, righteousness is good conduct. Birru is what they translate as righteousness. And husnul khuluq. Husn, remember we talked about husn from the hadith of ihsan. So husnul khuluq is the opposite of sayyi khuluq. Sayyi khuluq, bad character. Husnul khuluq, good character. But it doesn't say tayyib, yani khuluq or khayr khuluq. It's husn, meaning character you should strive to be at the top with your character. That way, if you يعني ينقص عن شيء يعني لا يهلك. That way, if you fall short, you're not destroyed. If you shoot for the best character, you fall short, then you still have some good merits. But if you don't shoot for high character and you fall short, you might be in the hellfire. So husn al-khuluq is also mentioned, the word husn, because this is something that is part of what and how we should be with one another. Husn al-ta'amul, acting in the best way with people. Remember Prophet Sallallahu in the other hadith, he said that إن الله كتب ماذا الإحسان على ماذا كل شيء, that Allah has prescribed that you strive to do excellence in everything. So here husn al-khuluq, the character, it has to be something that we strive to have high character. And Prophet Sallallahu called it bir. Therefore the scholars, they said bir, if it's in this is point number one, bir, if it's with taqwa, so write bir / taqwa. Bir / taqwa, this is point number one. If they're together, then they said bir means being good or the best to people. If bir and taqwa was together, number one, bir, then it means being good and the best towards people / doing all good deeds. And obeying Allah. That's if the bir is coupled with taqwa. And taqwa, if it's with bir, then it means staying away from that which is prohibited. / disliked by the people. Point number two, if bir is alone, or you can put number two, if they come alone, referring to bir and taqwa, then each one carries both meanings. If bir comes alone and taqwa, then they carry one another's meaning, both meanings. Like we said about Islam and Iman and the issue of Fuqara wal Masakin. If they come together, they carry different meanings. If they're by themselves, they carry both meanings. So that's two. And number three, the third thing from this one, the Prophet Sallam, he said, and in itham, sin, ma haka fi sadrik, that which he doesn't settle well in the heart of a person. The third point, that this that part of the hadith, what doesn't settle in the heart, doesn't mean that it's a sin all the way across the board. There's some exception to this rule. Now, and then the fourth point, when he said to staftih qalbak, consult your heart, this means a heart that is untainted religiously. Untainted religiously. Has the right development and the right knowledge. Consult your heart if the heart is untainted religiously. إذا كان القلب سليم من الدنس والعيوب والشبهات, from sin, disobedience, and things of misconception. with jahl and ignorance, wal ma'asi and disobedience. If the heart is free from those things, then you consult your heart, because your heart will lead you to what's right. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number 5, He said, وَمَنْ يُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِ الْقَلْبُهُ. Whoever believes in Allah, Allah will guide his heart. That this is the pure heart, the unadulterated heart from taint, ignorance, misconception, and disobedience. Next hadith.
I got one quote to the Prohibition Hadith. I mean, the Prophet knows what he's coming for, because it said, like, the Prophet ﷺ said, "جئت تسأل عن البر." So the Prophet already knows what he's coming to ask him for. Or there was a story behind it, or
Yeah, يحتمل هذا أو يحتمل هذا. It could mean, the scholar said, something happened, so he knew that that person was coming to ask. Just like some narrations when he said, "La taqab," don't become angry. He knew that person had an anger problem. That's why they said in some narrations it was Ibn Umar who said that to others. It was Abu Dhar al-Ghafari. So in this case, some scholars said he knew that person was come to ask about that. Others say it was revealed to him by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, sent Jibril to tell him about this incident. So when the person came, the Prophet knew from revelation. Faddala. Barakallahu feek.
عن أبي نجيح العرباء.
Point, stop before you say it. Anytime you see the Prophet, since this is in the same hadith, right, number 6. This is important, but you can apply this all the way across the board. Anytime the Prophet says something of the unseen, Allah Bafiq. This is your barakah. You brought this out. Anytime the Prophet says something about the unseen or the hereafter or Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, it was revealed to him. Even if it doesn't say it, you have to assume that safely. You don't have to write this down. I'm going to give you another example, but that point you should have down. Anytime the Prophet ﷺ talks about something of the unseen or something that has to do with the paradise or the hellfire or something about Allah, it was revealed to him. One of the points to prove this, when you don't have to write this example, as long as you have those points. You need me to say it again, or you got it? Got it? Everybody got it? Say it. One of the things, the Hadith Bukhari and Muslim, Hadith known to be the Hadith of Ukkasha ibn Muhsin. Ukkasha ibn Muhsin, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He's the companion of the Prophet, min Bani Asad, from the Quraysh. Quraysh had different tribes within the Quraysh tribe. So Bani Asad was one of the tribes. Just like the Prophet was from Bani Hashim, but they're from the Quraysh tribe. So this person, the Hadith, the Prophet told him he had Jannah. At the end of this story, the Prophet ﷺ described those people who will be those who Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in the day of judgment will make them from those who have no hisab wala adhab. No hisab wala adhab. May Allah make us from those who have no hisab wala adhab. Say Ameen. Because no hisab means you don't have nothing to be questioned about. And if you don't have nothing to be questioned about, that means there's no punishment. So the Prophet mentioned 70,000 يدخلون الجنة بغير حساب ولا عذاب. 70,000 of his ummah will enter paradise without being questioned or punished. And some ulama, they said 70,000 here, ليس بمعنى 70,000 على إطلاق. It doesn't mean 70,000 altogether and that's it. It means 70,000 من كل 100,000. It means 70,000 out of every 100,000 from his ummah. Huh? Sah. So, this hadith, one person, he said, Ya Rasulullah, Allah and yaj'alni min. He said, make dua and ask him to make me from those people. The Prophet said to him, wa anta minhum. You're from amongst them. Then another man said, Ya Rasulullah, Allah and yaj'alni minhum. O Messenger of Allah, like me too. Could you ask Allah for me too? Make me from amongst them? And the Prophet said, Sabaqaka biha Ukkasha. Ukkasha already beat you to it. Some scholars said he said that because he didn't want to hurt the man's feelings, because Allah Azza wa Jal, soon as Ukkasha asked the Prophet that, he sent Jibril to him, where the people didn't see Jibril, and told him he's from amongst those people. But when the other man asked, Allah didn't send Jibril with the reply, so the Prophet didn't want to hurt his feelings. He just said, Sabaqaka biha Ukkasha. Ukkasha, like, who wants this candy? Then Ahmed reaches and gets it from him. Then Fatima come and say, I want one. Say, he beat you. Next time. Okay. But I say, that's it. You don't get nothing. She may be sad. So this hadith is another proof that whenever the Prophet talks about something of the hereafter, the paradise, the Jannah, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, that is from revelation, because you can't say the Prophet told him you're from amongst them on his own. How does he know who's going to be in the Jannah? So this principle is important. The ulama said you have to know that Jibril came to him. It was revealed to him, because the Prophet la yantiqu mada, and then Hawa, doesn't speak from his desires like us, astaghfirullah, all over the place, just to speak. Desires, ma fi shay'illa hawa, a'adhu billah. Allah forgive us. Faddal. هذا الحديث السابع والعشرون. This is 27. 28. Barakallah feek. That's Abdul Rahman. Oh, that's Abdul Latif. That's Usama. that's Ukatu. Zakallah khayr. Faddallah.
عن أبي نجيح عن العباس بن سارية رضي الله عنه قال وعظنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم موعظة وجلت منها القلوب وذابت منها العيون فقلنا يا رسول الله كأنها موعظة مودع فأوصنا قال أوصيكم بتقوى الله عز وجل والسمع والطاعة وإن تأمر عليكم عبد حبشي فإنه من يعش منكم فسيرى اختلافا كثيرا فعليكم بسنتي وسنة الخلفاء الراشدين المهديين تمسكوا بها وعضوا عليها بالنواجذ وإياكم محدثات الأمور فإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة رواه أبو داود والترمذي وقال حديث حسن صحيح.
Barakallahu fikum. This hadith 28, there's فيها زيادة يعني حسن وهو وكل بدعة ضلالة ثم وكل ضلالة في النار. So you see this hadith stops at وكل بدعة ضلالة. That's it. There's an additional part وحكم عليه يعني العلماء ومنهم شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية على أن الزيادة الصحيح وهو وكل ضلالة في النار. There's an extra part that's mentioned that the Prophet mentioned that wasn't reported here, and it's authentic, this addition. The Prophet said وكل ضلالة في النار. Here it just said وكل بدعة ضلالة. Every bid'ah is ضلالة. In this hadith, three main points. Point number one, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned after his death, we will see a lot of division. Prophet mentioned after his death, we will see a lot of division. And many ulama, they said because with the death of the Prophet ﷺ, يعني حينما يعني توفي عليه الصلاة والسلام ذهب بركات من الدنيا. So when he died, the barakat left from the ummah, from this dunya. And this is why you see the division, and the Prophet said, "Man ya'ish yani minkum ba'di." Yani that means that after the Prophet died, you're going to see this happen. Almost time. Point number 2. Yani sunnah here هو عام. سنة في هذه يعني الصيغة عام. Here it's general. General, like Tabarak wa Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, is general. وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ. What the Prophet give you, take it. So like for example the stove. هذا ليس مشروع. يعني أصلا. The origin of wearing this type of thobe is not legislated in the religion. This was the Arab custom, Qabbalu, yani Islam fi ayyam al-jahiliyyah, in the days of before Islam. But it became part of what's legislated because of the identity and the dress when the people became Muslim. So like for example, this is sunnah, but I don't have to wear this. So as long as I wear something that doesn't show my aura, something I can pray in, something that doesn't violate the Sharia, then that's still considered sunnah. So sunnah is am in this hadith. It's general. It includes ibadah, yani customs, aqidah. It includes physical characteristics like letting your hair grow to your earlobe or to your shoulder. That's the Prophet's sunnah. Now, yani leaving something you don't like you left the thing that people try to get him to eat. Yani he didn't like it. This is sunnah. So sunnah here is general. And then khulafa rashidin. The third point, that nothing that the companions do because of this hadith can be considered bid'ah. Nothing that the companions do based on this hadith, especially the khulafa, can be considered bid'ah, because the Prophet called it sunnah. From their ijtihad, they're working by knowledge to fix and solve something, he called it sunnah. Now, تفضلوا. What time is it?
9:30.
We'll stop at 1:45, inshallah. Barakallahu feek. تفضل. And those who have to go, they can go, inshallah. Barakallahu feek.
عن معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه قال قلت يا رسول الله أخبرني بعمل يدخلني الجنة ويباعدني عن النار. قال لقد سألت عن عظيم وإنه ليسير على من يسره الله تعالى عليه. تعبد الله لا تشرك به شيئا وتقيم الصلاة وتؤتي الزكاة وتصوم رمضان وتحج البيت. ثم قال ألا أدلك على أبواب الخير؟ الصوم جنة والصدقة تطفئ الخطيئة كما يطفئ الماء النار وصلاة الرجل في جوف الليل. الله. ثم تلا تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع حتى بلغ يعملون. ثم قال ألا أخبرك برأس الأمر وعموده وذروة سنامه؟ قلت بلى يا رسول الله. قال رأس الأمر الإسلام وعموده الصلاة وذروة سنامه الجهاد. ثم قال ألا أخبرك بملك ذلك كله؟ قلت بلى يا رسول الله. فأخذ بلسانه وقال قم فعليك هذا. قلت يا نبي الله وإننا مؤاخذون بما نتكلم به. فقال سكنتك أمك. وهل يكب الناس في النار على وجوههم أو قال على مناخرهم إلا حصائد ألسنتهم. رواه الترمذي وقال حديث حسن صحيح.
استغفر الله لا إله غير الله مغفر لنا وارحمنا وارزقنا وأنت الرازقين أنت خير الرازقين تب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. Hadith 29, huh? This is Hadith 29. This hadith is similar to the other hadith where the companions used to ask the Prophet ﷺ about things. Point number 1 for this hadith, yani hirs ashab Rasulullah ﷺ ala yani amalu salih. This is the point from this hadith, first point, This is the likes of the hadith that shows the companions were eager to do righteous deeds. That's why they asked them. There's nothing they asked the Prophet, he told them, except they did it. Unlike us, we may just want to understand, or, maybe we think it's something wrong, so we want to check, or, we never heard it before. But them, when they asked, they wanted to know so they can do it. That's the difference. That's the point number one from this hadith. Point number two, you see the Prophet ﷺ, he talking about a siyam. They call it a siyam ala junda. Junda, yes. Sawm huna is a shield. And again, this clearly is mutlaq. This is general, unrestricted. And some people that said Allah musta'an, Ramadan la Ramadan, we keep going back to this, the hadith Sahih Muslim, means that your minor sins will be forgiven. Ala tujtanibu al-kaba'ir, that you leave off the major sins. So you find this a lot. You say you have to make tawbah from the major sins. Yeah, this is true. And it's not so that we can play with the religion that someone say, well, you don't have to make tawbah. No, you do. But again, the ulama, they mention, like Fadilatu Shaikh Muhammad Mukhtar Shanqiti, who was from Ahl al-Shanqit, Mauritania, أصله من اليمن, هو من العلماء في مدينة Nabi Sallam. He's from the ulama of Medina. He said, this hadith where the Prophet says salawat al-khamsa, the 5 daily prayer, what's in between them, Jum'ah al-Jum'ah, from one Jum'ah to the next, Ramadan. He said this is called kafara baini, meaning just making it from one salat to the next, one Jum'ah to the next, one Ramadan to the next, just living from that period to the next. Allah has guaranteed you He will wipe away your minor sins. But major sins in the hadith is conditioned for those to be forgiven. You have to leave them off, or if you do them, make tawbah. But this hadith where the Prophet said, Wasam Mada, shield here, you can't be shielded from the fire except that your major sins are included. So this shows you that Sawm ala itlaq, yukaffir dhunub as-saghair wal kaba'ir. It wipes away the major and the minor. It's a different from the issue of ذات الفعل والشيء قبل الفعل. It's the difference between the action itself and something before the action, like the time period between that action to the next. So don't get them confused. And then Prophet Sallam, he mentioned the end, the same thing, about the tongue, and that people will be thrown in the fire because of what they say. Wallahu musta'an. Faddal. Yes.
عن أبي ثعلبة الخشني جرثوم بن ناشر رضي الله عنه عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الله تعالى فرض فرائض فلا تضيعوها وحد حدودا فلا تعتدوها وحرم أشياء فلا تنتكبوها وسكت عن أشياء رحمة لكم غير نسيان فلا تبحثوا عنها. حديث حسن رواه الدارقطني وغيره.
Where's Sheikh Omar? He's here? You could read this one. Inshallah. Barakallahu feek. Laka ajrun azim.
Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, verily Allah Ta'ala had laid down religious obligations, fara'id. So do not neglect them, and He has set limits, so do not overstep them. And He has forbidden some things, so do not violate them. And He has remained silent about some out of the compassion for you, not for forgetfulness. So do not seek after them. A Hasan Hadith narrated by
At-Tabarani.
and others.
Now, one point for this hadith. Some scholars try to say that this was only during the time when the Prophet was alive, because revelation was coming down. And that if people would ask about this and about that, maybe Allah would send down revelations. It would be too much for them. But we don't have a proof that that's only during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that you shouldn't ask about certain things, and Allah didn't mention them as a mercy, because Allah still knows, even though revelation is not coming down, that it will be difficult for you. So one of the points here is that some scholars try to say that was only for the Prophet's time, that things were not asked about out of fear that Allah would make it compulsory. But others said no, because, for example, people can ask about stuff that has not been revealed in bab istihza, by way of trying to make a mockery of the religion. So that always would exist until Yawm al-Qiyamah, that the person can't just be asking stuff even though Allah didn't reveal it, because he wants to make a mockery about that thing by playing with the religion. So that point, some scholars try to say this only referred to when the Prophet was alive. Now he's dead, you can ask whatever you want, but we say no, and that Allah Azza wa Jal did not mention them out of his mercy. We'll take one more hadith and then we'll stop. Hadith of Mada. اثنين وثلاثون 31. Tell you, we'll take two more and then we'll stop. What time is it?
9:40.
Okay, we'll have 5 minutes. Tell you. Let's try to take two more hadith.
عن أبي العباس سهل بن سعد الساعدي رضي الله عنه قال جاء
You in the mic for the women upstairs? Tell you. This is the 31st hadith.
جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله دلني على عمل إذا عملته أحبني الله وأحبني الناس فقال ازهد في الدنيا يحبك الله وازهد فيما عند الناس يحبك الناس حديث حسن رواه ابن ماجه وغيره بأسانيد حسنة.
This hadith 31. When a person, he came and asked the Prophet, دلني على يعني شيئا إذا يعني فعلته يحبك الناس, يحب يعني نعم يحب, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he bless you to do something, people will love you. And tell me something, yani, that if I do it, Allah, he will love me. So the Prophet he said concerning Allah, izhad yani and Allah, yani, as it relates to Allah, yani, do zuhud. And zuhud means, have different meanings of zuhud. What the qarrab yani al-ma'an, and the meanings are closely related. But most scholars, they say zuhud is yani that you take what you need of this dunya. You take what you need of this dunya, and the other side of zuhud is wara'ah, that you leave what you don't need, fearing that you may fall into the haram or be put in the hellfire. So zuhud, on one hand, you take what you need, and that shows you that people shouldn't be extreme and say, I don't need no dunya, I don't need no food, I don't need no clothes, I'll just eat one carrot and wear this one thobe for 40 or 30 years. No. Take what you need. If you need more than that garment, if you need more than that carrot, it's permissible. Doesn't mean that, you're a person who's not pious. But now some things are mubah, they're okay for you. They're allowed for you. But if you do that thing, it may turn into something haram. Like, for example, point in case, marrying a woman. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala said, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. Marry the women of your choice. And this was revealed because people were taking advantage of the yatama, the women that were orphans. So Allah said, rather than marry that orphan, take her money, treat her bad, make her second-class citizen, leave her because the punishment is that great, and marry women of your choice who are free and that they're not orphans. And then Allah said, Methna 2, 3, or 4. 2, 3, or 4 here, Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala said, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ, if you were in fear. And here's the violation. So here, when you talk about this particular narration, then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is talking the same language. The same language. What will make it okay for you as it relates to Allah? Then you stay away from what is haram and you take that which you need from the halal. And even that which is from the halal, you only take what you need. Not that it's haram, but if you get caught up in taking what you don't need from the halal, then you might take too much, and then you become somebody who's musrif, wasteful, musrif, using it in ways that you shouldn't use it, and although the thing is halal, it will get you in the fire. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, washat in the nas, yuhibbuk nas, and refrain from asking the people about what they have. Wallahi, this is difficult for people who are struggling and have difficult time, because you always have a need when you don't have. And if you see somebody with something you want to ask, but the Prophet is telling you this is the principle. Don't take and ask from the people. The people will love you. But there's some conditions called darura, where you have no other choice. Then this is an exception to the rule. But the darura is not every Friday you ask and you khaffaf aydikum amam nas. I need. No. Maybe there's months, weeks, people don't know you don't have this, you don't have that. But you don't ask because of this issue. You're making zuhd with the people. You're refraining from what the people have that they like and they don't want to give to you. So this, the Prophet mentioned. But if there's something that's an obligation upon you, something you have to ask, then this is allowed. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Last hadith.
عن أبي سعيد سعد بن سنان الخدري رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا ضرر ولا ضرار. حديث حسن رواه ابن ماجه والدار القطني وغيرهما مسندا، ورواه مالك في الموطأ مرسلا عن عمرو بن يحيى عن أبيه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فأسقط أبا سعيد وله طرق يقوي بعضها بعضا.
أيوة، هذا هو محدث. ما شاء الله. يذكرني بأيام ماذا في يمن عند العلماء محدثين. Allah Akbar. It reminds me of the days of sitting with the scholars of hadith. All of that technical stuff, you probably scratch your head. What was that? MashaAllah. Allah al-Mustan. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan. Allah bless you. This last hadith, very simple. I heard Imam Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen explain this hadith from the 40 hadith, and he said, what's the first one? La mada? Darara. And the last one is with kasra. Wala dira. The first one, darara. Imma bi tashdid ra, or imma bi ra'ain. Yani either you write it out with two ra, dad, ra, or dad, ra with shadda. Same meaning. But the point of writing it out here, because no one can be confused about the issue. The Prophet said, La darara. And this la here, some people said it means nefi, but they're wrong. It doesn't mean negation. It means tahrim, prohibition. La darara. Because when it's a prohibition, then the last harf is going to have a fatha. The lam of prohibition, you wouldn't stop on it. La darara, la tashrabba, and don't drink. La tajlisa. This is the rule for lam tahrim. Yani الذي يعني بعده يعني لازم أن يكون يعني منصوبا, has to have a fatha in the end. So the Prophet said لا ضرر. This, the Prophet Sallam, the Prophet Sallam is telling you this. Imam Ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen, he said this is when you do something without intending to do harm. Because the word darra means harm. But the Prophet here said, la darra. What they mean, said it means don't cause any harm to a person, even on mistake. This is one of the meanings of it. There's about 5 different meanings to this hadith, by the way. This is the most basic. La darara, do not harm somebody, even on mistake. So you say, oh, akhi, I didn't mean to. But akhi, you just bumped him. You stepped on his foot. You knocked his glasses out of his hand. You shouldn't have been in the way. La yajuz. Afu anni. Please forgive me. Say, yani, astaghfirullah. Allah Azza wa Jalla, I seek your forgiveness. Why? Because the Prophet told you, no matter if it's on purpose or mistake, don't do it. He said the first one means without intention. The second, wala dirara, means with intention. So anywhere it go, it shows you the harm to somebody in Islam is great. It's great. And that said, yushmal yani Muslim wal kafiran. This is even for the non-Muslim. Not to harm them on accident, neither to harm them on purpose. So this is yani a small hadith, but again, scholars talk about this from 5 different angles. That's how powerful this statement of the Prophet ﷺ is. Wa nasallallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala an yuktib lana ala mizanina hasanat fi dunya wal akhirah. ونسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى يتقبل منا جميعا ويوفقنا وإياكم بما يحب الله ويرضاه. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبد الله ورسوله وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وجزاكم الله خيرا جزاه ونسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى التوفيق. بارك الله فيكم. Tomorrow is the last day of the seminar. That's Hadith 32, huh? So that means we have 10 more Hadith tomorrow. 10 more, and you will have made history. Yani, wallah, I guarantee you, some people never read or let alone finish yani, this book. How about with some ta'liqat from one of the greatest ulama who explained it, Ibn Rajab. So this is a great fadl and barakat from Allah, a great blessing and gift. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and la yani futu alayna hadhihi al-ajr wa yuwaffiqna bi khayr wal ikhlas wa sidq wa jazakumullahu khayr. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now adhan and iqamah. We still got to pray Isha, brothers.